Доброе утро, уважаемые участники Гайдаровского форума. Спасибо, что...
Hello, good morning, dear participants in the Gaidar Forum. It is so good that you have decided to join us in this interesting discussion, getting out of the fog by the efforts of futurologists. It is good for me to be moderating this discussion. This has been self-isolation, and while self-isolated, I took several online courses, including Introduction to Futurology at California University hosted it. And that was a most unusual, probably the most unusual course in my life. However, I have a great opportunity, dear participants, and wonderful opportunity of talking to the real futurologists. And let me introduce our panelists, Alexey Turchin, who is the Vice President of the Science for Life Extension Foundation, and the author of several books like Immortality or Global Catastrophe is one, and Kirill Ignatiev, futurologist, a visionary and a regular author of tech forecasts. Some of them have already come true. And he's the chairman of the board of Russian Investment Group. And Aleksandr Kraynov, who's the head of the Artificial Intelligence Lab at Yandex. You occasionally give presentations at our academy, and perhaps you have offered the best explanation so far of what artificial intelligence is. So, thank you so much for being with us. And finally, Alexandr Laryanovskiy, who is a business development director and managing partner of Skyeng. You also have Yandex on your CV, so it's part of your background, and you stood at the source of artificial intelligence and IT in this country. I believe we're in for an elucidating discussion. It would also be great for our audience and the viewers to take part in this debate. So let's start with a small voting session before we embark on our visionary exercise. So you can see a question on your screen as to how much the 2020 event changed your life routine. The options are dramatically changed. Well, like everyone else, nothing's changed. I only wear a mask and keep my social distance, that's all. So, there's three options for your response. So we give you some time to vote in. In the meantime, let me give the floor first to Alexey Turchin. We're going to talk about the future now. However, before we do that, do you believe you could start by telling us about the role of future scientists and futurologists in the modern world, and what you are capable of, what you are good at doing, and what you are not so good at doing? I remember you described two possible scenarios in your book. Either we'll live for a very long time, or we're in for a catastrophe. However, some time has already passed since that book was published. Has your view changed? Okay, let's start with the role of futurologists. Look, futurologists do not predict the future so much as they, well, it is the PIFs that predict. However, we build models of desirable future and potential options. So the pitfalls we need to avoid, and the lucky outcome, the lucky strike we need to strive for. And so there are different paths we might follow. Either we move towards a dramatic extension of our lifespan, or we make use of the technologies in a deleterious way, so that we're in for a catastrophe. So far, the latter scenario is becoming more and more probable than the former one. And so a global catastrophe is very realistic, particularly if a second wave of the crisis or a new virus swoops on us, which is basically artificial. Hopefully your colleagues will be more optimistic than yourself. So, what about our voting poll? 72% responded that their lifestyle has not changed dramatically. However, 15% on the other side that it did change dramatically and that they started their life anew, kinda. Only 12% say that their lifestyle has somewhat changed. Why don't we ask Kirill? The same question goes to you, Kirill. We have already met with you several times at the Gaida Forum and elsewhere, and I do remember your forecasts of like 8 years ago or so. Some of them have not come true yet, whereas some others have. I do remember that you did talk about a threat of a pandemic, of a terrible new virus. So what's the role of futurologists from that perspective? Let me tell you this. Over the past 50 years, futurology has become very technology-oriented. It is not sociology. It is not technology. It is trend-watching. And you can actually study the future by delving into a huge amount of data and information derived by many scientists from many fields. So we'll take a look at a large number of experts in various disciplines, and we can say that a lot of risks that we have to deal with today are not so much tangible, not something that we have to combat against like a war or a catastrophe, but those risks that we do not believe in, and we do not have a strict procedure of dealing with those risks, like biological threats and hazards, or an eruption. So like there's a super volcano and then it erupts, and how is humanity going to deal with the global, global cooling? So that's what futurologists are doing these days. They're putting together a big picture by making use of diverse data from various sources. Rather say whether we're in for a final calamity or we're in for a brighter future. So, the year 2020, how much has it changed your life? What about your vision of the future with 2020 already behind us? Well, of course, the COVID crisis caused a lot of dismay. We used to ruminate about potential biological hazards, but we never took it as a tangible, as a very real threat. So something that would require us to make a U-turn in our business operations and to adapt our lifestyles. So I think by and large we managed to achieve that. However, the situation is serious. It's like a third world war. We're dealing with a lot of deaths, human deaths. We're dealing with a lot of looming threats. And I believe that we're going to overcome this crisis like we're going to overcome any war. There will be joy and there will be a lot of poverty around. Now, a question to you. Alexandra, people are talking a lot about changed lifestyles and artificial intelligence at the doorstep. However, I believe that operations of Yandex and your own work has not changed dramatically. This is something that you kind of anticipated and you were getting prepared to. Did the year 2020 dramatically change your approach to new developments, to your ongoing work, or is it just a background, kind of new background that helped us focus more on the new developments? I believe that recent years have been changing our life. We are no longer alone. So we used to be kind of isolated, so we have developed a technology, we have mastered it, and we will know it, and we're alone. No one else can do that. So there's a handful of IT companies that are dealing with one another, and we are not in a hurry to develop our technologies, whereas the rest of the world is out there. Now, everything has changed. And the technologies we've been working on for the past decade can be now applied everywhere. Say, a taxi or food deliveries are based on artificial intelligence. Can you be more specific, a little more specific about that? Because I'm not sure all of our viewers have a good understanding of how this works, like food deliveries or taxi. Look, a perfect taxi, perfect cab, is when a taxi driver earns a lot of money, whereas a passenger pays little. However, a company that implements that will not survive for long. It will go bust. It's good that a cabbie will go to meet an order, and then he'll go someplace, and he'll carry a passenger someplace, but he will only get paid for the little distance that he will carry someone. So the best way would be for a taxi driver, for a cabbie, to carry someone all the time. So we need to properly choose the taxi driver, to calculate the zones of high demand for cabbies, because otherwise they'll have to spend money in vain in getting to an area of high demand. And the routing is also important. What is routing? So we have several options of how we can get to, say, to point A, and we need to identify the best route of getting there. So it only appears that it is so simple that you push a button and here you go. Here's a click. At the click of the fingers, you have a taxi at your curb. Now, well, we have a great shortage of those intellectuals who can actually develop and deploy those technologies, and we need to run ahead of ourselves to do that. Because, well, there's a lot of temptation. You have developed a product that can be beneficial both for people and for businesses. And, well, everybody would benefit from that by making use of your product, and Aleksandr will tell you more about education. You can do incredible things about education nowadays. So you cannot amble today. You can run ahead of yourself. Okay. Well, since you mentioned education, so the floor goes to Aleksandr. Education. I think that every day we keep talking about what's in store for education online, and some people say that we're going online for good. Others say no, no way. We're going to come back offline as fast as we can. So what's your vision of the future of education, online education too? What are the trends that lie in store for us? I believe that the largest problem is that online is when you work from home or when you study from home. And there's a dichotomy of whether you need to keep your kid at home or send him off to school. are we online or offline now? We're offline among us, and we're online for the rest of the audience out there. So we have tried to visualize a model that we could devise. We IT companies are now paying off their IT debt. The technologies that have been in use for a long time, except for education. So everybody has been using CRM or feedbacks everywhere, except for education. Or say, like Hollywood teaching. Something that they can do, people in the education domain cannot do. So we need to pay off that debt to education, to society. Second, the technology companies are working as agents who are trying to identify the weak spots and the high demands available in the market by demonstrating where the formal education system should be looking at. We are like a SWAT squad. We are learning very fast to make quick decisions how we could overhaul education, so higher learning and others. So we need to work very quickly to identify and deploy new solutions, which would then be rolled out in the overall system of public education. Also, everything boils down to data, and we want to transfer to pass over to personalization and customization from template solutions. In music, algorithms have been everywhere. Food and cuisine, algorithms are everywhere. Taxi, same. Clothing and fashion. Yes, we can actually produce clothing items that would be customized to every individual. So we need to do something similar to that in education. And we need to maximize our education results. We need to improve its efficiency and effectiveness. People out there in the street started learning at some point in time, and then they dropped out just because they had no motivation. They were bored in learning, seeing no results. Why does it happen? Because technology is imperfect, because you were not retained as a student. And so I believe that we're in for new breakthroughs. Okay, why don't we ask a question to the audience? Let's take another voting round. Here's a question. Who was the best to deal with the changes in the education system? Last year, back in 2020, 3 options. School children and college students, parents, or the faculty, teachers. Well, there is no option like no one. But out of those, who did it? So who did it better? Kids and college students, parents, or teachers. In the meantime, let's get back to our discussion. Well, in fact, I'd like to ask you what kind of future you see. I understand that you are futurologists and that you're not fortune tellers. I understand that. And I understand that you are analyzing ongoing trends. So who are futurologists anyway? These are the people who can visualize the future earlier than others. Can you share your vision with us, except for like that bland rhetoric, like we're in for breakthroughs, etc., blah, blah, blah. So what was the most remarkable thing about 2020? The COVID and the text generation by making use of the natural languages, an algorithm that can actually expound on an original text on a human level and can actually open up new vistas for programming. Because you can actually be programming by setting a row of examples, and then the software will generate this programming language further. What about the system like DP4 that is in this year? And if it becomes much larger than the previous one, then the artificial intelligence, the big artificial intelligence, will come into being in a few coming years. Is it a benefit or a threat? Well, yes, there are threats, but there are good opportunities, most interesting opportunities for digital immortality too. Because if we are actually train this system by making use of the actual selection of text, then this artificial intelligence will keep on writing and generating new texts like Yandex delivery also forecasts my behavior pattern. But this is applied thing. This is not a good example, because they do not know where I am exactly. The good digital immortality is something that is designed as the full restoration of the deceased people so that they kind of get a new lease in life. And this digital immortality is something that can be made true. So we can actually make this happen in a bad way. The bad way. However, we need to accumulate enough data to make it happen in a good way.
Kirill, what will you say? And by the way, allow me to interrupt. Just before the pandemic, you ran a big research on the world trend together with the RANEPA Academy. So how relevant is it today? And what else have you added there? Well, of course, things have accelerated. I would rather focus on three things regarding our research and the image of the future. Well, of course, acceleration covered the human-centric economy, the projects and businesses related to healthcare, comfort. I use the word anthroponomics for that. So I think that if in the past we were talking in conferences that the future is about some technology singularity, the realm of machines that are far superior to humans, well, this will happen. But I think now we understand that the future is with anthroponomics, human-centric economy, and there'll be a new players there. We see this every day. I have friends. One of them used to be a cook, and he's now gone into synthesized produce, replacing sugar and salt. Another guy used to be an engineer, and he started doing medicine. So this will fly. And another thing, I think, which is, very important, we're in a forum on economics, and I'd like to mention that. In the past, human incomes were growing and the quality of life was growing. But now we've got into an absolutely new phenomenon, and we'll be studying that. The quality of life will keep growing more and more because people have come to think about the world around themselves. But the rate of personal wealth is not going to be as high as in the past, because even now a lot of people are earning likes rather than money and are prepared to perceive their work and business as fun, as a source of pleasure. And that has a lot of implications for business. So people are not going to become rich as fast as possible, are not going to want to enrich themselves as fast, but they would like to be happy. There'll be a lot of services that will come free. For instance, there are technologies that will allow producing basic foodstuffs like free bread. You'll have microchips and there'll be nano devices And people, oh, you're scaring me, you're scaring me. No, it's just great. It's just great. Think about it. People will be getting free bread, some free basic produce. This topic will enter the economy, free basic produce. And also, one other thing that I'd like to mention regarding the change, it's about certain things that we'll see that will touch every one of us. In 2020s, I think we'll go away from cash in developed countries. In 2020s, we'll also see a lot of space, a lot of people in space, for instance, at the same spaceship with dozens of people there. We'll see quite exciting things, such as like the ubiquity of electricity-driven vehicles everywhere, and that will happen within 10 to 20 years from now. And the main trend will be about the personalization of products due to technologies. And if we've got personalized healthcare and personalized food, then the big question will be, why do we need, or will we need so many pharmacies and food stores around us? So offline will start serving online. The last thought I'd like to share. You know, offline is going away from being number one. For instance, I do fitness with a coach via Skype, or we launch a project where people from a food chain, through their video consultancy, video sessions, so these consultants from stores, they stay in stores, and right from the stores, they provide consultancy to people who come to the online pages. So this is a very important trend. Offline will stay there, but it will start to become a service for online. Thank you. I would like to reframe this question a bit. I know that you're a great Go player, and you mentioned quite a well-known fact that the breakpoint in AI happened when the machine won a human in such a complex game as Go. So what is the next landmark that a rank-and-file citizen would understand, showing us that we've moved to an absolutely new step? Well, I'd like to say that the breakpoint mostly applied to the attitudes. So when large convolutional networks appear, for those who understood things, it was absolutely... May I just interrupt you? Well, perhaps this will not sound modest for you, but I think you were one of the very few people who predicted this moment very well, worldwide. Yes, perhaps I was one of the few, just because it was a very small percentage of people that had a knowledge of what deep learning, neural networks, and machine learning are all about. For laymen, just the thought that a machine can have intuition was just a no-go. But for a specialist, it was quite obvious that we could expect that from a machine. So it was the natural moment. And for us, every time a kink point happens, it's not when a radical discovery is made in science, but when the gradual curve of technology development comes to a level that everybody starts understanding that it starts to change their life. So I don't know what will happen like that. Maybe it's about drones. Well, of course, drones and driverless cars are, we can see them in Moscow streets. Unfortunately, the law doesn't allow them to drive without people, so people are still taking their place at the driver's seat. In healthcare, for instance, a qualitative change may happen when they will agree, when they will allow okay, let machines be allowed to diagnose, and then everybody starts to understand that it's possible, and in addition, that the diagnostics are becoming better than made by humans. So now, if you remember, the law of robotics, they were written quite a long time ago by a sci-fi writer. So the level of knowledge in the society is very low. It's more about fears based on the lack of knowledge and on the movies. And of course, in the movie industry, you always have to have a bad guy, and the machine is playing that role. So I think that the king point will happen at the moment when people will understand that there are much more opportunities there than challenges. I think if we're on a poll now and ask them if they will agree that they're being diagnosed by a machine rather than a person, of course everybody will say no, the machine will make a mistake. But nobody will even think about the question, who is making better diagnosis now? So what makes Go interesting? It's becoming quite obvious. Yes, the machine is playing better than a human. In healthcare, it's much more difficult because the stakes are much higher. But when it is going to be proven mathematically that the machine is more effective than a human, saving human lives, for instance, then that will be the change I'm talking about. The change will happen when it enters the areas that are as conservative as you could think about. Regarding healthcare, you said that the king point is going to happen when the people will start believing. But we know that even now, big data analytics provides a better prognosis for the ailment development than even a very good doctor. So what will happen then? Go players will probably keep playing because they're getting fun. But what about the medical doctors? There are two very important points here. One very important point is that people, while they were alone, not having a system that could take decisions, we were assessing the complexity of problems by the number of people that it would take to solve this problem. This is going to change when it comes to talk about machines. For machines, so there are such problems that are very easy to be solved by a human, but for a machine it's immensely difficult. Just, for instance, to make a puncture, it's an injection of a medicine. It's a very simple task for a human, but it's an immensely complicated task for a machine. Machines are learning, well, usually there are two targets of learning. Either we have some observation history that allows us to get data that are proven historically, or if we don't have in a situation like that, they learn from the best people. There are verdicts from best specialists, human specialists, and the machine is learning from them. Take a doctor. Imagine there's a genius doctor, one in all the planet, but their capacity is limited. Of course, they can teach, but there are that many people that they can treat. But when they start teaching a machine, they will scale up their capability incredibly, covering perhaps the entire humanity. And this is what the technology gives us. The importance of a human grows. The expert knowledge, if you're a genius and if you possess huge capability and knowledge, so thanks to this technology, you can apply your knowledge much broader than without them. Thank you, Kirill. I have a small response. I think back to the machine learning, there are a lot of additions to be made in the 2020s, because one of the most popular gadgets in 2020s will be augmented reality glasses, will be able to process the picture that we see, each one of us, and that will allow a machine, software, to be learned on our own vision, on our own experience. And I think that will be a very good scenario that we'll see in the very near future. Thank you. Let's come back to our vote. Can you bring back the results of the voting? Who, in your opinion, has coped best with the changes in the education system? According to our viewers, 52% believe that school children and students, 18% parents, and only 29 of our viewers have voted for the faculty and teachers. Aleksandr, can you comment? Well, I think that the best to cope with the changes were those who had locus control inside, meaning those parents who perfectly know that it's their responsibility for what their kid is going to become up until a certain age. So if the control point is with them, then everything's good. In that case, the system can even stand in the way, like in a computer game, stand in the way for you to reach the goal. So it's no surprise that school children and students, among whom there are a lot of motivated people, were coping better because they just had an understanding that they really needed that. And regarding what my colleagues have said earlier, look, all these technologies free up a lot of time. And what's of interest is not the technologies as such, but how people will change because of these technologies. Now, thanks to Yandex and their colleagues, we save several hours a day. Like, for instance, since March, I've never gone to a grocery store. They just deliver things 3, 4, 5 hours a day. I don't have to spend them on unproductive things. And let's think, what have we people spent this time on? On ourselves, on self-development, on investing and making our lives better, or maybe just watch another TV series. That's the important story. You know, the technologies are doing more and more for us. So one would say that that's just another opportunity, but no. In fact, we're just flushing it down the toilet. And that brings us back again to the question. I think the important change of this year will be how people will be taking more and more responsibility for setting goals for themselves. And this will happen with school children and students in the first place. And teachers and parents will be borrowing ideas from them. In terms of evolutionary development, in your opinion, all these new capabilities and opportunities, AI and other things, spare me from listing them, will they bring us to a situation where the people will become better or worse in terms of evolution? Well, I guess evolution can't make a human worse, but let's simplify the question. Our brain, is it going to become, more perfect, or it's going to shed some functions that we use now? Look, a unit of evolution is not a species. The unit of evolution is a population, and this changes everything. Look back 120 years ago, so that the whole humanity could live, not in a rich way, but just to survive. 95% had to work till their death. Now half of the world don't work at all. Half of the world don't work at all, and we live much better than we used to. So if you continue this trend, the population will survive this way. Somebody will keep their brain busy, and other people will keep their thumb on the remote control busy. Okay, colleagues, anybody to add anything? What I'll add is that these digital technologies are not being optimized to create more addictive products. In fact, rather do. So both social media and TV series are becoming more attractive, and people just get into the train. Let me add, Netflix is spending dozens of billions of dollars a year for the content. The question, the education that should compete with them for the audience, should they be spending hundreds of billions? And the question is then, are we in the education spending billions of dollars? No, we're not even spending a tenth of that. So, Aleksandr, a provocative question. You do education, teaching foreign languages. Not only that, I know not only that, but still. And it's quite obvious for all of us that one day, sooner or later, we'll get perfect interpreters based on technology that will be running in our headsets or whatever. What's happened? Look, I started using the internet in 1982. And for the first 15 years, that was my competitive advantage. I had something that other people didn't have. And because of that, I could do a lot of things that other people couldn't. Now everybody has the internet. So when something becomes a commodity, so everybody has this, take this machine translation. So those will differentiate, who will be able to do better, who to speak better, for instance. So you always have this need to stand up from the crowd. And you know, machine learning will cover all the daily needs, but in order to build a more successful career, you have to learn the language the good old way, until, of course, we'll learn to embed it into our brain.
Сможет с этим справляться машина.
So, let's better think about how the world will change if we take the Tower of Babel away. Okay, let's go from the languages to other spheres. I have the following question, and I'd like to start with Kirill. How can people get prepared for the changes that are awaiting us? Just to sit and wait, or to change their development path or learning path, or how to plan the future, to have a different look at the future of their children. Are there any recommendations that you can give to our viewers? I would say that today the main scenario of life in the future is that almost every one of us will become a business person, because the labor market in the future will not only be a labor market for us as humans, but also a labor market for digital twins, because the accounts we have, the way we present ourselves in social media makes a difference, and because a lot of things will be done online, and the headcounts of companies will shrink. People will have to become competitive, including the digital environment. So my recommendation will be twofold. First, to get prepared, to acquire the skills. In the first place, the skills of taking responsibility for your life, and this is a businessman. And second, to be aware of what's happening. Listen to futurologists, look at the market trends. There are a lot of markets that are going to grow in the next 10 years. Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the time is running up, and I think we've spent it in a very exciting way and didn't even notice how the time flew. But before we wrap up, I'd like to make a small announcement. At 5 p.m. Today, we'll have a session where we'll again discuss the questions that we got today. We asked all the speakers to come up with questions preparations for the evening discussion. So we invite all the viewers to join us again at 5 p.m. Moscow time. So, dear colleagues, thank you very much. Thank you, dear viewers, for your interest, for your attention. And keep staying with us. The Gaidar Forum is going on. Thank you.
Изменились ли мы? Стали другими или остались собой? Принимая время, место, обстоятельства. Главное не остановиться сегодня, чтобы стать сильнее завтра. И знать, мы вместе. И это все меняет. Ваш Газпромбанк.
звуке или в тексте, ушами или глазами, но всегда мозгами. Только по делу. Главное в политике, главное в бизнесе, главное о личных деньгах. Со скоростью звука, со скоростью света. Услышать и увидеть. Один бренд, два адреса. Бизнес FM и bfm.ru. Не на словах, а на деле.